So, I'm gonna make everyone watching this video feel a little bit old with this opening statement. The original Teen Titans animated series is nearly 2 decades old.
Oh my god.
And I'm sorry if the majority of you just had an internal crisis realizing that, but it had to be said because I had that reckoning myself when I rewatched the series for the first time in a very long time a year ago. And it made me realize as well that Teen Titans Go has also been on for nearly a decade, which especially feels weird to me because that's now longer than the original series has been on air for. So guess what? We're going to show love to the OG series today and look into where it all began back in 2003 with Glen Murakami and David Slack's baby, Teen Titans. But we're not just going to be doing a look back at it, I'm going to do you one better. Every episode, each season, ranked. Yeah, I know, not exactly an original concept, but I'll be honest, this is a good time as any to do it, given a lot of people who grew up with it. They may not remember how good or bad these truly were. I sure as heck didn't before investing my time into this after all. Now, rules to start us off. Each episode will be ranked individually and then compiled into one list of all the episodes at the very end, meaning there may be some episodes that rank higher or lower depending on where they were ranked in each season, but also depending on certain factors from episode to episode. 2. This will not include specials like the Lost episode, which was only released on the Trouble in Tokyo DVD, and the Trouble in Tokyo movie itself. We're only focusing on the core episodes from the series that ran from 2003 to 2006. But if you do want my thoughts on Trouble in Tokyo real quick, I think it's a perfectly fine epilogue to the series. However, like one particular episode we'll get to later on in this list, I don't feel like it's that satisfying of an ending given the behind-the-scenes drama surrounding the series back in 2006. 3. This is my own personal opinion and ranking, and not a definitive worst to best ranking made up by superfans. It's just how I feel now after rewatching a series I loved so much as a kid again, and as such, I want to be able to share how I feel about it above all else. With all that being said, however, let's get into it. This is every episode of Teen Titans Ranked. Let's... Teen Titans! Hi, yes, the episode where everything kicks off. And not gonna lie, it's an alright first glance at the show. It gives you exactly what you would expect going in, and introduces us to the quirks, mannerisms, and overall powers each team member exhibits. But in general, it's just okay. I'm not even really saying that to dig at it. Believe it or not, most series openers are just okay, and that is perfectly fine. It doesn't break the mold with opening episodes, but it does set the stage for a lot of character relationships with each other this season. And not only that, but it manages to show us a good open look at how things are between Robin and Cyborg as the first real piece of conflict, which for a hot second looks to be the main focal point while the real story happens in the background, with the big bad of the season, Slade, making his first moves. Mind you, this kind of thing doesn't get revisited often, but I digress. It's a good starting point, and it does show exactly what you would expect from Teen Titans, and honestly, that's good enough for it to start off. I'm just gonna warn you all now, I think Starfire episodes are either really bloody amazing, or some of the worst episodes in a season. So you can probably guess where I'm going with this one, aren't you? Yep. Sisters is a bad one. Not only that, but as an introduction to Blackfire, who also appears in some of the worst episodes for Starfire, it's very telling to know what we can expect from episodes of this nature when there is so much forced conflict of Starfire feeling like she'll be replaced. And while I totally get the whole concept of being rejected by others for people you introduce them to way too well, I have to be blunt, it's not a very good look for either Starfire or the members of her team. And yes, this episode does give us some hints at the will they, won't they plot of Robin and Starfire being an item, which the series will not only revisit but really have a home for the dramatic factors later on. But it really does come across as an episode which could have been done better, especially with how some of the godlike episodes based around Starfire will be in later seasons. Ironically, this is the first episode a lot of people would have seen when first viewing it, and as an establishing episode, it works well setting up the big bad of the season as well as the Hive 5, who, while they take a major back seat after this episode, do come back later on. Aside from that, however, this episode is alright. It's a good showcase of what happens when each tide is counteracted successfully and showing them being able to evolve with their fighting styles. But aside from that, it's an early indication of a trait of this early part of the show that I'm not fond of. That being some villain groups that are introduced but only brought back in the weirdest, most contrived of ways. Sometimes not even for that good of a reason. You know what I just said about villains being introduced but not properly coming back until later on for contrived reasons? Yeah, we're about to get to another one of those groups, but unlike Hive, these two, Thunder and Lightning, don't come back for a very long time. And when they do, it's like, just for a brief finale cameo? This is all we got for them as their B-hero characters for this entire show? So let me say this. The Storm Twins are one of, if not the most, underdeveloped characters in the entire show, because their entire manifesto for what they do here and how they get manipulated into doing their evil deeds, it's just lol arson using our powers is fun, which is honestly one of the worst reasonings for any kind of villainy, because unless you're the Joker and causing that kind of arson has literally been all your character has been for 60 years, you kind of can't really pull it off in my opinion. Because these two chuckleheads certainly don't. That, plus a bit of an annoying subplot involving Starfire and Beast Boy, makes this one of the lower episodes of the season in my opinion. Cyborg-focused episodes either go one of three ways for plotlines. Either something really weird happens when he fiddles with technology, he's seen as a human finally and is able to embrace that finally for the first time in forever, or he deals with the reality of himself being, well, not entirely human. So guess which plot this episode goes down? After a failed attempt at taking down their opponent of the week, Cyborg finds his body failing and, by a huge coinky-dink, has another mechanical man say that he can fix it. However, during this whole process, he's gaslit into being told his situation is much worse than thought, and eventually the true nature of wanting to make him fully robotic comes to light. All the while, the rest of the team hunts down Mumbo, the baddie of the week, believing to have had Cyborg kidnapped. While that part of the episode is less than stellar, it's a good side story to supplement the overall heavy vibes that come from the later half, where it turns into a race against time to save Cyborg, which even now as a 20-something adult, still gets me every single time. Also, little side note, the moment where Cyborg has a moment with a kid who has a prosthetic arm really shows you early on how progressive this show was for the time. Remember this for future episodes in the ranking, that's all I'm gonna say. Oh boy, our first Raven episode. And like most Raven-based episodes, it's a doozy right off the bat. Okay, so anyone who's known about tie-ins to the Glen can tell you that Raven is basically the big creepy goth girl with daddy issues who's one of the big two to get sexualized by the fandom at large for 2 decades straight. But in this episode, it quickly turns into a setup episode for the actual concept of Raven's character being this much more puzzling creation. All the while going down a good old journey to the center of Raven's storyline. But not only that, it sets up a lot of different aspects for one season in particular, which, while we're about several dozen episodes away from getting to that point, the plot aspects for Raven that it establishes here are worthy alone of ranking it high enough, especially given how much of a slog this early season can be. Although, to be blunt about it, Cyborg and Beast Boy really are in the wrong by doing this, and it's probably one of my most annoying instances of them being shown as characters in their own separate story with this, so it gets points deducted for that. I'm just gonna start this off by saying the Puppet King really deserves a better episode than this. And also, a villain like him should not be the thing that is least remembered about his own damn villain spotlight episode. Especially because, in my opinion, while the namesake switch between Starfire and Raven being in each other's bodies makes for an interesting dynamic for this episode, knowing that it basically amounts to Starfire and Raven's powers are built upon different sides of the emotional coin makes for good scenes, but by the end, it just makes me wonder what it could have been. Not to mention, yes, this is where that bit of dialogue that was used in that notorious parody comes from, so trust me when I say that it was hard placing it lower purely out of the fact that it spawned from this episode. In fact, purely because I loved mind control hero characters, and maybe have some feelings about dolls being used as control devices, this stays the course of being another decent episode. But I do very much want to say it was hard not placing it below Sisters. Hey, Hey everybody, it's your favorite underwater-based hottie. No, it's not Jason Momoa, he was still on Baywatch I figure out about that time, but it's the next best thing. It's Aqualad. And it's also a Beast Boy episode, so I guess I gotta say now that his early episodes kinda won't make it past the halfway point on these rankings. It's not me saying that the episodes are bad, some of them are terrible though, we'll get to those soon. But for early series Beast Boy, he can get grating when he has to show some less than stellar tendencies, like in this episode. Basic plot, the team is stuck on the water and had to rely on Aqualad to get their guy from the episode, as well as get them back to the surface. Beast Boy feels intimidated and therefore feels like Aqualad is a threat, also because he's making Raven uncharacteristically fawn over him alongside Starfire. And while the climax leans into the typical working together but also villain has multiple copies of themselves trope, I guess, it doesn't exactly make me want to go back for rewatches when there's better Aqualad episodes and way better Beast Boy episodes. Another important episode for Robin, and one where I feel like his character leans heavily into the aspects which will later define the later part of the season. Mass is a very heavy episode that introduces us to the persona of Red X. Red X is a mysterious rogue that acts very similar to the leader of the Titans, but always manages to pop around whenever Robin isn't. Of course, if you know anything about these kinds of plots, you can already piece together what's going on here without much effort. However, the way they get to the big reveal at the end while also showing the Lakeside boy Wonder will go to, not just to ensure he gets one step ahead of the big bad Slade, but shows how much of his mentor he really is like by unfortunately cutting out his team from the information about what he's doing and why. Which does go to show even if he's not like Batman, little parts of him are still there. As a part of the ongoing Slade arc of this season, it's important for showing how far Slade is getting into his head, as well as given that the two will gain a partnership of sort for the episode, something that will be revisited later on. But even as a standalone episode, it's honestly a good character piece for Robin and shows the complexity that this season brings out, especially so early on into the series run. Oh boy, it's one of two episodes involving Mad Mod, everyone's favorite British stereotype who seems to love using his Hypno King to brain drain people, and when did this start getting so horny? Anyway, Mad Mod's two episodes in this series as a villain have a certain charm to them that I will admit, but this first one has only one memorable part, and that's the Scooby-Doo-esque chase scene backdrop by the song K2G by Puffy Amiyumi. That, alongside the abstract imagery at times during this episode, are some of the defining features of this one. Everything else about Mad Mod's first appearance, however, it's kinda lame, especially the ending when it's revealed that this dashing man in a Union Jack themed suit is actually a liver spot sporting oldie who's controlling everything from a weirdly set up cockpit. That, including the running joke about Beast Boy continuously getting distracted by hypno spirals becoming an overrun joke to the degree it gets annoying, makes this episode not one I will revisit often, but I will always rewatch that K2G video clip separate from it, however. Alright, let's talk about one of my other pet peeves of this series, whiplash-inducing penultimate episodes that come just before a finale. And I find no one bigger in my opinion than Car Trouble, a Type 1 cyborg episode where he fills around with his car and hijinks ensues as a result. Adding Gizmo as the villain of the episode who steals said car after some greasers end up stealing it and taking it for a joyride, and the other villain they caught earlier, Overload, ends up possessing it and forcing Cyborg to destroy it, and boom. I just described to you the entire plot of this episode. It's a prime episode of why episodes where Cyborg fumbles around with tech kinda don't always make for good episodes, and especially with this one being the penultimate episode before the finale of all things, it really doesn't do that much to keep it from being the one I wish to skip on rewatches, let alone it being a frankly do-nothing episode which, even as a kid, I tuned out for the middle portion entirely because, I'm sorry to say it, the carjacking drama and the goddamn greases was where I just tuned out entirely. As the culmination of the entire season's Slade plotline, not only does it make for a good focus on why Slade is one of the top tier nemesises of the Titans, but it sets up a lot of development between the cast dynamic in later seasons. Not only that, but Robin as a character basically changes after this moment, from being just the leader of the team to being his own complex character, which, for a member of the Bat family in this area of the DCAU, is so damn satisfying. Unlike most episodes, I'm not going to delve deep into these multi-part finales because it works best if you follow the show itself. But for this one, the brief rundown of Robin being blackmailed into becoming Slade's apprentice and being forced to fight his own former teammates, it shows you not just the lengths that this show will go down later on with its big bads, but also sets up just how conniving Slade will be going forward. And the best part is, we won't have to wait that long to find out where it goes from here. So yeah, that's season 1 down the pipeline. I will admit, it's not exactly the most groundbreaking of series to start it all off, however, that doesn't make it bad. It just means that, like any series like this, it's going to have its ups and downs at points, but we're definitely far and away from the worst parts of it, but we're certainly far and away from the best of it. And if you know what's coming up next, this next season is going to be absolutely one of the highlights of this entire show. Let's start digging around. Let's get right to it. So this season certainly starts off with a much bigger bang than last time. Not only that, but it's one of the better Starfire episodes I mentioned previously coming in to star us up as well, so there's a double plus. How Long Is Forever starts us off with the tides at odds again. All the while, poor Starfire is just trying to be a good friend and celebrate one of her world's holidays with them as well, but they are just not having it no matter how nice Star is being. Then, following along a botched operation where Star is leaped 20 years into the future to find her friends not only split up shortly after, but was so traumatized by losing her, they basically all kind of lose their way. Save for Robin, who adapted and became Nightwing in this parallel timeline. So you know, good for him I guess. It not only shows how important Star is as a member of the team because of her optimism, but it also shows how, despite how good of a team they can be, they're still like their namesake is. Teenagers. And like teenagers, without someone to balance them out at times, it only takes one major incident for their hormones to get the better of them and break them apart. Star being the glue that keeps them held together is oddly a nice thing for her character. Great Starfire episode and a great start to the season. And that great starting point of the season is followed up by undeniably the worst episode of the season. And surprising nobody, it's a Beast Boy episode. Basic premise is that Beast Boy is annoying the team again while they're off doing their own thing, goes off and sulks, gets attention in dog mode, and is mistaken for being an alien's dog while the gang has to make a switcheroo once they find the alien's dog instead. That's it. I can't even make any funny jokes about this to bring up how much of an absolute waste of time this episode is. And the whole thing with Beast Boy being treated like an actual dog is just cruel and droning, alongside just in general being an annoying part of the episode to go back to when the alien himself is obviously I hesitate to say man-child, so I'll just go with child. Not entertaining this any further, bottom of the list for sure. And so begins the season story arc, with unfortunately a very bland episode. Yeah, I'll be honest, I'm not super big on Terra's starting episode, especially with how the storyline plays out later on. But the introduction of Terra, the namesake of the episode, is a good way to show how much of an influence she'll have on the majority of the season's major plot episodes is really good. I just personally wish that the overall meat of this episode had more than just the general mistrust vibes from all involved, which leads to what is honestly one of my least favorite endings to any plot-related episode in this series, bar none. But the whole reason why Terra leaves is simply because Beast Boy opens his big mouth too much. Oh yeah, Slade's here too. He'll be more important later on in the season, however. Here, he's just doing what I hate writers doing with Slade, making him do cryptically evil things in the backdrop and spouting what's meant to be corrupting words into Terra. Add all of that together and this arc of the season trips at the starting line, and while it recovers enough to make a sprint later on, it really could have been so much better in my opinion. Oh look, another Type 3 Cyborg episode in the green tier. Noticing a pattern with those types of episodes by now, Cyborg dealing with his limitations with his mechanical parts this time by realizing he can only go to a certain amount before he overheats is admittedly a premise that will get used in another, more exhausting way in the future, but in this episode it's treated like something that he regrets despite all the good his mechanical body can do. But unlike some of his parts, the conflict comes accidentally, mind you, from being in a depression pit and obsessing over his skills on the one thing he can't control, fighting games. But in getting too good, he eggs on the baddie of the day, Atlas, voiced by the suave king of Amphibia himself, Keith David. And after getting his robotic butt handed to him by Atlas, he falls deeper into his depression, believing he can only go so far. However, having a good self-pep talk in which he stops feeding into the side of him that's a robot and more into the part that's human, alongside the Tides convincing Atlas's assistant to release him, it's a good boost for Cyborg to deliver the blow to Atlas and then some. I'd argue that Only Human is a good second side of the coin to the sum of his parts, as it focuses on how, despite the limitations both being half human and half cyborg can give and take from him, Cyborg can use both in ingenious ways to beat down anyone, and the acceptance from him doing so is such a brilliant move that it makes me happy for moments like this. It feeds into one of his best moments later on in the series. This is an episode I feel could have been so much better if the second half was more fleshed out, and wasn't supplemented by a control freak plot to start us off. And I say that because Fear itself being another Raven-centered plot in its second half, developing what we had learned from episodes like Nevermore and even Switch doubles as a sign of things to come in later episodes, while also being a good self-contained plot in its own right. Raven dealing with fear after a spooky movie night and it being caused by her powers, which as we learned are fueled by her emotions and are easily manipulated by external sources, alongside the obvious hints to things we'll be seeing more of in a later season, it getting into that more here is good, and the result makes for, while not a bad or mediocre episode, a good enough episode with a premise that we'll revisit later on in the series to better effect. Remember all that I said about the Robin and Starfire romance plot in Season 1? Remember how I said it could get grating at times? No? Well, this is a perfect example of that fact. As if that weren't enough, we gotta deal with the team being blackmailed into Robin taking some villain spoilt teenager to the prom, and I am already wanting to press the skip episode button on that premise alone. Doesn't exactly help his daughter is just the worst, especially with how annoying this girl's voice is, as well as the fact she's being a manipulative teenager over the fact that she won't get her way. That alongside Starfire being the worst about everything and eventually causing the climax to happen out of the contrivance, and I'm sorry, but it's not an episode I wish to revisit again unless absolutely necessary. It's not as horrible as Every Dog was, but it's very close, honestly. Okay, Starfire, we were going good with your episodes this season with the opener, and I know the last episode was kind of not the best, but why did you have to give us this episode immediately after? It's the Starfire Puberty episode, and it gets really, really sad from the second act onwards. Like, calling it a narrator to emphasize the depression level sad. And honestly, the third act with her being tricked into being put into a pod to be eaten alive by whatever the heck this thing is, once again showing how gullible Starfire can be, only to be saved by the Tides and having a cocoon suddenly cure her deformity. Yeah, I don't get it. It's not a terrible episode by any means, just an episode I wish could have had a lot better writing behind it. It's not as bad as Date with Destiny, however. That's not exactly saying much. Wow, after 6 episodes into the season, Terra finally shows back up. And honestly, this episode is a marginal improvement over her debut. Showing back up with much improved control over her powers and a much better attitude, Terra joins the team on a temp basis for a mission to prove herself, but runs into issues early when Raven is distrustful, while the others are prepared to give her a shot. While Raven being the one to cause issues with Terra isn't exactly a bad thing, in fact I'd argue it's in her character for Raven, given her past and given the fact that for all intents and purposes she's not exactly Miss Sociable. It gets grating in the first and second act when they argue every other moment. However, the part where they finally reach an understanding of the climax is worth it, and the return of Slade just as Terra returns as well may just give first-time watchers a bit to think about and wonder what's going on, but if you know, you know. One comment real quick before we get started. Why is Terra not in this episode? You gave her a room and everything. Why the fuck is she not here? Okay, now we can move on. Robin, Beast Boy, and Cyborg get abducted alongside other side characters from the series, including the debuting Speedy and Hotspot, to become the undisputed best young hero on Earth. Through what else? 1v1 me, bro! I joke, but honestly it's because this episode doesn't really have that much going for it. Yes, we already know there's something a bit iffy going on in the background, and it's just the lame stuff, honestly. Being blunt, this episode has some good matchups that introduces us to 2 new characters who will be important later on, but aside from that, it's basically a filler until we get to the next episode, which kicks off the 3 episodes that are arguably top tier for this season. Holy shit, what an episode this is. I'd argue this is the peak of the entire Terra arc for this season, and its big reveal is spoiled by the title of it. Yes, this is the episode where Terra betrays the Titans, but with the way that it happens, it's just so heart-wrenching because it's tied in with a Beast Boy subplot where he's finally telling Terra about his feelings for her, a factor of which has been apparent since her first episode. So not only do you have the heartbreak of the team realizing they've been duped by Terra, Terra's second guessing of her alliance with Slade, but you also have Beast Boy's heart being broken just as he's having a lovely date with her, all the while Titan's tower is under attack, and it all adds up to an absolutely crushing moment for all involved. With Terra's villain arc finally beginning as she's shunned by the boy that she broke the heart of, and the Titans realizing Slade has their number with all their weaknesses, leading into a 2-parter which caps off this season in a hell of a way. This hits all the buttons of a penultimate episode, and I can't say any more praise than that. Top of the list for sure. But of course, before we can get to that finale, we gotta endure this track. Much like Car Trouble from last season, this episode seeks to be the cool-off between Betrayal and the finale 2-parter, to which I argue, why does this constantly need to be a thing? And why did we have to have a super deformed, annoying Robin Light as comedic relief character just for this episode? You know what? Why am I mincing words of this? This would go lower than every dog if it wasn't for the villain, who I'd argue deserves a much better episode than playing second fiddle to this monstrosity. And if every dog wasn't in this season, this surely would take the cake as being the worst of this season by a landslide. Aftershock is a story of 2 parts. One is an absolute curb stomp battle between Terra and the Titans that takes the first bit of part 1, and then followed up by Terra 1v1ing all the Titans to browbeat them at the same time after they've already dealt with certain other villains of the day being curb stomped by them separately, and sending them literally underground in the second half. This is then followed up by Terra and Slade having taken over the city, and Terra literally being haunted by her past actions, more or less leading to the team coming back to kick her butt over again with renewed vigor, resulting in Slade, having learned a thing or two from his last apprentice, literally puppeteering Terra into his control to beat them down. And finally, this leads to a really touching moment for Terra's redemption, I suppose, and ensures that he stays gone this time as she crushes the both of them. The ending is a bit weak given the payoff in the entire Terra arc. We couldn't have her properly become a Titan again with too much baggage at that point, but that moment at the end is a thing of beauty, and serves as an end to the first big nemesis of the Titans. Or is it? But honestly, I don't think it's as impactful as Betrayal was, and it's certainly a high bar to clear given the stakes you more or less gave us in that one episode alone, and it's hard to follow up an entire curb stomp battle by a villain with anything really huge in my opinion. But it's a good collective second if you ask me. So that's the Terra arc down the line, and once again, I feel like that's one of the seasons that really does feel like a big attraction for it, and it definitely shows in its overall presentation. That being said, however, we're getting to quite possibly the middle child of the entire series, and if you ask me, it's a bit of a downer. Let's get right to it, let's rip that band-aid right off. Starting off the season with yet another banger I see, and it's the episode of Cyborgs we haven't come across yet, him getting to be seen as a human again. And it's also the return of the High Five again, and we finally get to see more of their team alongside the school itself finally, while also having Cyborg pose as a student in order to gain more information about them. Of course, having just had a season that was all about one of their own betraying them, deception plays into the themes of the aftermath of the Terra arc very well when it feels like Cyborg has just betrayed them. Of course, we the audience know better than that, but the fake out does a good job of keeping even those watching it for the 100th time on their toes with how it just suckers you into thinking Sai is actually betrayed the Titans. Another great Cyborg episode for the books, and another brilliant opener, especially for what ends up happening at the end of this season. So it's starting us off of a high note for sure. Damn, 2 banger episodes in a row, huh? Makes me a little bit worried for the rest of the season, but not gonna lie, both of these are majorly big episodes, so I don't mind at all. So yeah, Red X is back, but this time it isn't Robin behind the mask, and he's suspicious about it. However, the rest of the team is a bit uncertain to trust him given what happened with Red X the last time. Some bits after the first fight of the episode being a major highlight that yes, they didn't forget what happened last time. Mixed in with a plotline revolving around a dangerous kind of material that powers the suit that especially gets Cyborg angry at him.
Xenothium? You powered that suit with xenothium? Are you crazy, man? That stuff is dangerous and unstable. Tell me you were not stupid enough to go messing with it.
It's never explicitly revealed who is under the Red X suit, and that remains a mystery to this day. And I kinda like it being kept like that. Keeps the whole not every story needs closure bit, and it's even joked about in the new Teen Titans shorts that came out years following the series. But as an episode about Robin dealing with his past and realizing that yes, he's messed up a lot, it's good building of a character for him while also being another highlight and a very good start to a season. Of course though, the run of good episodes can't last forever, and this as another Starfire episode with a Robin Starfire subtext to it, as well the Return of Blackfire. You can already kind of connect the dots on where this episode is gonna go. I hesitate to say it's a bad episode though. Unlike previous Robin Starfire episodes and other Blackfire episodes, it's decent. I'm just not a fan of the arranged marriage plot being the main thing driving the episode along for obvious reasons. Also, it's an episode where for once Robin is the one going after and saving Starfire from a terrible fate as someone's lover instead of the other way around, and it's oddly nice to be honest. Also, seeing Blackfire get her ass handed to her on a silver platter by Starfire is always so satisfying after what that girl had to go through both in this and in Sisters, so it's not terrible. I just kinda wish the less icky bits weren't around. Hey, so you remember that Type 1 Cyborg episode where I mentioned being really bad? Well, we finally get around to it and I'm already regretting wanting to talk about this one. Basic plot, BB accidentally puts a buggy video game into Cyborg by mistake, and Cyborg goes haywire wanting to eat everything. Eventually chomping on major bits of technology in the city, and the gang has to stop him with help from Gizmo, which involves going inside Cyborg to do so. You can already see the jokes coming along without that much thought, can't you? And yes, it is just as inane as you think it is for a runtime of 22 minutes, including openings and endings. Plus, bringing back Gizmo isn't exactly all that nice given most episodes he's in tend to end up this low when he's a focal point of it. So it's no surprise this goes where it goes. So this season has probably already hit its peak with this episode, which is worrying because we have about 8 more episodes to go. But to me, this is where the stories individually peak, with Robin becoming obsessed with proving that Slade is out there following the conclusion of last season. Convinced he's still out there, but nobody else being able to see him, it turns into a psychological horror real quick when we realize that Robin may very well be in too deep with Slade and his hero work, that he can't separate the facts from his own personal beliefs on the matter. It's a hell of an episode, the kind I wish that Fear itself from last season could have been. And the best part is that it doesn't really give us a clear-cut answer on if it was Robin hallucinating it, or if Slade is still out there in some form. Even the stinger at the end giving the viewer more questions than answers at its core, and like Red X, that's a plus in my book. Top tier of the list for sure. Oh hey Raven, nice of you to have an episode again, and it's unfortunately no less than good episode that, while having some good bits and bobs to it, should have been much better for her, not gonna lie. So Raven's got engrossed in a book and keeps on getting interrupted by missions in order to read it. However, she eventually finds the book contacting her and wanting to give her more power in her abilities, eventually becoming so powerful that she manages to free the spirit from the book, believing it to be the hero. She actually finds it to be the malefic dragon-like force instead. Big fight ensues, Dragon gets locked away again, and the day is saved. And you'd think I'd be rating it low because of that premise, but it's incidental bits that really bring it home. Especially with Raven and Beast Boy showing their first signs of being a couple with the coda of the entire episode, and it's a heartfelt moment as well because Raven genuinely thinks that nobody really gets her, and then Beast Boy just gives her all she needs, assurance that people do get her. It's got its flaws, but it also has its charm as well. Oh boy, it's Mad Mod 2, British Boogaloo, and it's happening on the 4th of July, so you know they have to be annoying with how good America is as well during it. I kid, but it's honestly the better of the two Mad Mod-centered episodes by a long shot, because he actually gets to turn the city into essentially Britain. Or what the creators think of when they think of Britain anyway. Cockney accents and all. But of course they gotta turn it to America because something those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it, which honestly makes as much sense as the nonsense Beast Boy spouts near the end. Honestly, the entire point of this episode feels like a big America is good, America is great episode, and I deduct points hard on it for that. But its references to British media like Monty Python, Coronation Street, and the Beatles being on Mount Rushmore, that especially sends me. It's little things like that that get this Australian gal chuckling a bit, especially because of how Mad Mod corrects people on saying stuff like biscuits instead of cookies, which my wife especially loves to quote. It's fine. Could deal with less American propaganda though. Aqualad is back, Hive makes a comeback, what could possibly go wrong? Oh yeah, it's apparently an episode that brings back Bumblebee to reveal herself as a double agent against Hive. Cool, I guess. Look, this episode isn't terrible, but aside from setup for the final 2 episodes and Cyborg's arc for the season, I don't get much out of this as much as others, honestly. Like, Bumblebee's a good character, I can't doubt that, and Aqualad and Beast Boy working together without bickering makes for a good change of pace. But if I had to pick any episode from the season that I forget a lot of details on, it's this one, and it's unfortunate that it's tied to the overarching plot of the season. Alright, you want to talk about bad episodes though? This is the surface point of a bad one. The Beast Boy becomes an incel episode. This is honestly one of the lowest points we've ever seen Beast Boy, and it's honestly hard to say that after the atrocity that was Every Dog last season, but somehow this manages to get close to crowning that as the worst Beast Boy episode. Honestly, if the reveal of his change in attitude being caused by a chemical waste and him having somewhat of a werewolf-like persona coming out as a result of it wasn't the climax of this would be right down at the bottom, but for having a dickhead villain like Adonis being beat down by Beast Boy, as well as none of the crew letting his new attitude be, and especially him being apologetic afterwards once it's all out of his system, it's safer being right down at the bottom. But honestly, it's still really bad. Like, won't ever watch this on revisits bad. Hey, so did you notice in the majority of the season to start there was this little alien bug creature showing up every so often? Well, this is the episode where it finally shows up and becomes a big thing. And honestly, it's really not good of an episode. I'm reminded of the episode Helter Shelter from Powerpuff Girls whenever I watch this episode, and it's especially because both of those episodes are just a lot to handle, especially in the second half where Silky becomes too big to keep in Titan's tower, and Mothman comes back to corrupt it. Then, only through the power of love does it stop its evil ways, self-destructs, and, of course, is reborn like a phoenix or something. Yeah, honestly, this is another one where I'm not a big fan, and this season really piling on its worst episodes at the end, I'm not a fan of this at all. And it's very much shown to be a fact of this one. Bunny Raven, or How to Make a Tight Animal Disappear, is the return of Mumbo after 2 seasons, and honestly this episode makes me wish he stayed gone. It's weird Alice in Wonderland meets Furry's plot really doesn't do much for me, and its musical number at the end of the second act doesn't do it any favors either, with it being the worst music made for the show thus far, and that being the point or otherwise, I just really do not like this episode, and the fact that it's the 3rd penultimate episode in a row being a dud before a finale 2-parter is just getting on my nerves by this point, alongside it being the 3rd bad episode in a row. And because of that and more, I have no problem placing this one right at the bottom of this season. Finale time. Finally. And honestly, while I love the story arc this season has been telling since Deception with Cyborg showing some wants to lead his own team of Titans, and it's slowly building up as the season has gone along with encounters with the Hive, it's honestly one of the weaker season enders in my opinion. First off, with all the hints this season about him wanting to take on more of a leadership role, it's odd that Cyborg seems to not want to be doing this with this whole setting up Titans East thing, given that was kind of his arc this season. Plus, while the team being all over the place and then coming together is a nice little bit at the end of episode 1, the mind control aspect of the team being under the control of Brother Blood does come out of nowhere in the second part. I get they needed conflict, but you already had a really good story going on with Cyborg feeling conflicted about leaving Titans East at the end of episode 1. Honestly, in my opinion, you could have done part 2 first half as Robin and Cyborg bickering akin to their fight in Divide and Conquer, but blended aspects about their characters have grown. And then keep the second part in because it contains arguably one of the best moments for Cyborg in the entirety of the series. If a bit out of left field with Cyborg pulling a Gurren log and a Brother Blood with his whole human fighting spirit speech, it's a good moment, but it doesn't make sense in the long term. Otherwise, this could have been a better cap-off for Season 3, which in my opinion was a very top-heavy one with good episodes. Its second half unfortunately left a lot to be desired. Can't say that about next season, however. Is it mean to say that Season 3 is probably the weakest one of them all? If it is, I'm sorry for being mean here, but honestly, this was the weakest season we've gone through so far. Yes, the Titans East storyline was really good, but it doesn't really make up for the fact that Cyborg's entire part of it was really underwhelming at the end of it, and it's still, in its separate episodes, didn't really feel all that good. But like I've already said, we're getting to another huge highlight of the series, so once again, let's not waste any more time, let's get to it. So Season 4 starts off, unlike the last 2 seasons, with a bad one. Had to happen eventually, but I'm sad to say, we got ourselves a Control Freak focused episode. Remember when he was just an annoying nerd that got beat down in the first act of a Raven episode? Me too. Because now we have to deal with his antics for an entire episode. All the while Beast Boy's brand of geekdom is played for laughs, the Titans have to go into the TV world in order to stop him. Unfortunately, it's not that TV world, it's just lame TV show parodies. Mainly Star Wars and anime. Oh, and there's also this lovely line said during it near the end by a news anchor.
TV literally rots your brains.
Told ya.
Only highlight of this episode is the Zinfos ad. Gets me every time. Everything else, however, can go right into a dumpster. Not a good start to this season, honestly. The quest, however, is a slight improvement on the season, but not by a lot. As another Robin-centered episode, you'd be forgiven for getting a bit tired of his antics by now, and just wanting to have an episode where he doesn't act like a hothead. Well, you're not going to get that here because this is quite possibly his worst yet. But with that being said, The Quest is a decent episode where Robin gets his butt handed to a lot, deservedly so, mind you, while being taught an obvious lesson on just slowing the fuck down, young man, and learning to just chill with his whole gotta get better to let my pride be at ease arc, which, after 4 seasons of this, almost gets a bit tiresome to sit through. The single 1v1s he goes through are nice, and the rest of the Titans rummaging through his gear while he's away is a nice little distraction. Otherwise, this one's a bit meh, if you ask me. Alright, arc for the season begins with this episode, and while there are a lot of good parts to this episode, this arc starts off with a bit of an interesting run. It's Raven's birthday, but she ain't happy about it being a thing, despite the Titans trying to cheer her up the entire time about it. However, with the combination of Raven experiencing visions made by a familiar-sounding voice, and the return of Slade, both moments sporting the same insignia emblazoned during them, it's not hard to connect the dots on what's going on here. The bulk of the episode being an extended chase sequence with frankly off-putting imagery of Slade ripping apart Raven's clothes does get to be a bit much near the end. But the effect it's left on the team, and Raven especially, makes it clear that something big is coming. Something involving Raven, and it's unfortunately something they need to find a way to fix, or their world is doomed. As vague as the oncoming storm known as Trigon is made to be in this episode, as well as the kickoff of Slade being his henchman, downgrade for being his own villain are kind of the downsides. I gotta be honest, it's hard not to be excited for this story arc as it's probably the peak of the entire series. The opener of it just isn't as good as the rest of it in my opinion. Alright, here's an episode I find hard to put into any of the Cyborg episode archetypes, and is kind of its own outlier in a way. Cyborg getting transported through time to become Conan. Somehow. I'll admit, it's a nice episode with a stupid premise, and its whole Cyborg and the leader of the Horror Knights, and they end up falling in love with each other while leading them to victory is a cliche plot for something like this, but I'm not gonna say it's a bad episode because of it, because it has a lot of moments that lead into the Type 2 territory. And an ending with Cyborg leading the charge of being pulled back to present day as a result of the Titans trying to find him using, well, we never see, but they just do? It's equally stupid, but Cyborg knowing that they did the thing at the end was such a good feeling that makes it worth it. Not a terrible episode, but not particularly mind-blowing either. Hey, did you guys know that Beast Boy is a vegetarian? Didn't you? Don't know how you could have gone away with that when the writers keep on finding ways to bring it up, especially this episode where it's more or less a plot point. So BB wants to get a moped and try his hand at working several different odd jobs in order to do so, but he manages to suck at every single one until he finally cracks and gets a job at the new local burger store that opened up. I'm not joking about the name here. Mega Meaty Meat. It's like Mr. Meaty on steroids or something because all they serve is meat-based food and it grosses out BB. But you gotta do what you gotta do in a capitalist society, so he works there and finds it's not actually meat, but some kind of alien tofu, which obviously is worse than regular tofu because shut up. And the whole final act just being Beast Boy need to send the new food back into tofu form by squirting it with water is admittedly ingenious, but also just kinda doesn't make it anything less than another less than great Beast Boy episode. Hopefully that changes soon because it's getting a bit tiring seeing his episodes end up in the red. And here we come to arguably one of my favorite episodes, and honestly the best Starfire-focused episode of the entire show as well, Troc. To talk about context here, Titans had talked a bit in passing about how race was a bit of a talking point, but never really delved into it all that much with characters like Cyborg, for instance. But this episode goes hard into the talking point that not many people would expect a Starfire episode to go into: racism and bigotry. The Titans are introduced to an intergalactic superhero known as Val-Yor, who they all immediately fawn over as a collective. Afterwards, they're invited to help him out in taking a galactic threat alongside him, and of course they agree to. Everyone is getting along great with him, and him to them, except Starfire, who bless her heart is just trying her best to be useful, but seems to be getting the brunt of his anger without even meaning to, and eventually comes out that he thinks of her as a stupid Troc. Now, I don't need to explain what is being substituted for here, but if you know anything about storylines like this, then you can probably tell what was said and was seriously fucked up to call someone like Starfire. And it keeps on going for the rest of the episode as well. Starfire just wants to help, Val-Yor gets angry and calls her a slur, and the only one who really figures out things about it is Cyborg, leading to this touching moment between the two which culminates in this line.
You know what it feels like to be judged simply because of how you look?
Of course I do. I'm part robot.
Obviously you can't just say, yeah, it's because I'm black, because you can get the idea purely by reading between the lines here, which is a lovely sentiment and a brilliant show, and it's Coda with Star overcoming everything hurled at her to basically one-up Val-Yor at the tail end, and even save his life, all for him to try and call her one of the good ones, serves as an episode I can show even non-viewers to get them into this series. Don't be surprised if this makes your overall top 5 listing. Just saying. So this is a marginal improvement over Birthmark. The Titans know now that something is up with Slade reappearing with the weird symbol on his head. Alongside that, Raven is attempting to try and figure out what, if anything, can be done to stop her from being Trigon's envoy and basically dooming the entire world in the process. All the while, Slade reappears to taunt the Titans as they try to follow him down into a cavern and end up finding a lot more about Raven's circumstance than they had known before, ending with them almost finding a way to help her out, but they are duped by Slade at the end, who's really just kind of styling on them at this point with his new demonic powers, until Raven, who more or less had her own little side story, which involved contacting the spirit of her dead mother in order to try and find her own answers, which leads to what you'd expect by now. Raven fends Slade off, the Titans now know the full extent about what is happening, and they all feel a sense of dread knowing that their options are slim and they need to prepare for anything. Truly a grim way to go into the midpoint of our season, and especially the second of 5 episode arcs for the season as well. With how it basically sets up a no-win scenario for the final parts of this arc and the season as a whole, and not only gives us the biggest stakes yet, this has to go near the top of the list. Hard to place it above Troc, but it is a good place below it. Okay, I know that Prophecy would be a tough act to follow, but I didn't anticipate that the one to follow it up would be so much of a slugfest to get through. So the Titans are somehow in space in this episode. Let's not question it and just move on. They get attacked by some random space alien and all land on different planets. Starfire and Robin land on one planet and have what you'd expect from a separate story with them by now, except this time it's just awful to sit through because it's like seeing a relationship fall apart in real time. BB and Cyborg are on another planet with Cyborg's body parts scattered around, and BB has to be the one to put them back together so Cy can fix the ship. Hilarity ensues. And finally, Raven lands on a third planet where she's hailed as a queen and reluctantly plays along with it. She arguably has the better end of the stick by the end of the episode. Separately, these would have been fine episodes to sit through, but altogether they make for jumbled messes of storylines just zipping back and forth between one another, and by the end I just questioned what I watched and how I kept myself from conking out. The only thing that kept me remotely interested is Raven having a moment of contemplation of staying given what awaits her later in the season, and I don't blame her for it. A Type 1 Cyborg episode that doesn't make it below the halfway mark threshold? Hallelujah! And given the stiff competition it had this season, if it didn't have the Trigon arc to contest with, this would be a top contender for being in the upper echelon. But for now, let's talk about it. Cyborg gets a new upgrade for his system to make him run faster, and while it does provide a lot of upgrades and quality of life improvements, it's when Billy Numerous arrives to cause a kerfuffle that Cyborg basically goes all that with the chip to try and take him out, even sacrificing his necessary stuff like sleep in order to take out all of the Numerous Billies. Get it? Which eventually catches up to him when he finally gets close to beating them finally. But, with help from his friends and some proper rest, he manages to actually get them down by employing their own tricks against Billy. And while it's a tiny bit underwhelming of a finale, the ingenuity the team uses, as well as Cyborg learning more about why he doesn't go full robot for himself and the viewer, it's a nice episode to focus on the other side of the coin for a change. Solid episode, just barely misses the mark for hitting green. This next episode, however, makes me cringe like nothing else. Not gonna focus hard on this, it's yet another penultimate preseason finale multi-part break episode, and honestly, it's probably the absolute worst of them all. Between the titular Mother May I being one of the most uncomfortable villains to sit through an entire episode of in more ways than one, the Titans being utterly annoying at times to a degree I just want to look at my phone out of pure distraction while watching it, to the way they finish off May I being just dumb? I feel no shame at putting this at the very bottom of the list, and it may potentially bottom out of the entire rankings because there are zero redeeming qualities about this episode and I refuse to watch it on revisits. And so we come to what is quite possibly the apex of the entire series. The end. A 3-part magnum opus that doubles as a season finale as it does the culminations of Raven's arc that began all the way in season 1 with Nevermore. Trigon's ascent to Earth, the fall of the Titans and Earth as a whole, and Raven being sent to such a depth of despair that the only remaining part of her left is a child version of her. It's grim. Like, the type of grim that you can get away with on a show like this, but grim regardless. It's so goddamn good, and I don't want to spoil any of it aside from that synopsis. It's one of those I would recommend watching the entirety of Raven's episodes in order to fully understand just how much of the creators of the show have this all planned out. But even with it condensed to just this season's arc, this being the climax of it is worth the ride. I will say one thing though, it's additionally the perfect use of Slade and arguably justifies him being used as Trigon's henchman the entire time, and his subplot is possibly the best way to close off his arc as well. So big props on the creators for doing what they did with him in these 3 episodes. Home run all around. This not only tops this season's list, but don't be surprised if it reaches the top of the overall list with how good of a 3-parter this is. Season 4 was certainly a mixed bag, but this makes up for it in a lot of ways, and there's a reason why Raven is people's most favorite Titan after watching these episodes. Alright, season 4 was really good. I'm not gonna debate anything about that. We're nearing an hour at this point, so let's get right to it, because I know you're all getting tired of me talking at this point, and I'm getting tired of talking. Let's get through to season 5. Let's go. So, I want to start this off with a question. Did any of you watch the hit HBO Max show Doom Patrol? If you did, good. You'll appreciate this episode a lot more and wonder why Beast Boy wasn't a part of it in that show. If you didn't, this is still a very good 2-parter to open up a season. Already breaking ground here with this if you ask me, as it focuses on the Doom Patrol background that BB had prior to joining the Titans, which is actually in line with his comic background, so major nerd points there. It's a nice setup for the plot of something much bigger being in the works this season, and instead of a lot of smaller episodes breaking up the plot episodes, save for only 1 or 2 near the end, every episode is connected to each other up until the finale. And honestly, while this one is a nice starting point of the Titans Together story arc, it's gotta contend with being a Beast Boy-centered episode too, which is finally breaking above the halfway mark for once, and it's certainly close enough to call it a bit of an interesting one to balance with, if you ask me. It's good, don't get me wrong, but if you're gonna delve on BB's origins and start your arc, pick one episode to do each with and stick with it. And once again, we follow up a bit of a mid-opener with one hell of a good second episode. And not only is it the return of Hotspot finally, but Madame Rouge makes an appearance as well. Unfortunately not voiced by Michelle Gomez, but a gal can always imagine her sultry voice behind the booth. That being said, this episode's title is no joke, as Robin and Hotspot are basically being tested on their trust of each other, as Rouge uses her ability of pretending to be others against them, causing friction and almost getting them killed on occasion. Only by trusting each other, however, can they manage to beat her, but the way it ties into the unfortunate plot of the Brotherhood of Evil is both ingenious and diabolical, and I loved every second of it. Expect this to be a high ranker for sure, as it not only kept me invested every minute, but it made me love Hotspot as a character after his first appearance in season 2 and left me kinda iffy on him. Oh great, another Control Freak episode. But thankfully it's saved by the return of the Titans East gang after taking a whole season off. Probably for the best given the state of the world last season. Anywho, Control Freak calls them out for not being his Titans, and therefore challenges them to a game show-like format in order to prove to the entire city that they are just as good as the regular Titans. As a premise, this episode is really good given we don't see the Titans in action at all, aside from a call with Cyborg at the very beginning. In execution, however, it leaves a lot to be desired. It does have its moments with the individual tasks they need to do, and Titans East continuing to find creative ways to be Control Freak in his games, but the overall episode itself just barely misses the mark with how the public ends up being to the whole thing, with the forum reactions being the parts I feel are especially dated as hell at points. Titans East are good enough, but they could have some mid-tier episodes like the regular Titans. Starfire just can't catch a break with having a good episode streak, can she? So the Titans are in Russia, OBS, and they are trying to hunt down the cause of the ongoing snowy weather in the area, like worse snow than usual bad weather. However, Star gets separated from the rest of the team and gets rescued by this nice Soviet-esque superhuman known as Red Star. Got it! Who has a lot of issues with dealing with his powers, choosing to suppress them instead of embrace them. This later becomes an issue when they need to take down the force that's causing the storms, and it's found to be a byproduct of the experiments that made Red Star what he is today, hence the additional guilt on the matter. But honestly, between the obvious Soviet references and the relationship between Star and Red being less than engaging, this is one episode this season I feel bad about not liking as much as I did, because it had so much potential coming from it and it feels like a bit of a waste. So this episode involves the Titans facing off against dinosaurs. Trust me, I know it sounds weird, but work with me here. And in the process of trying to beat down Dr. Light again, they find a duo in the forest, Cole and Gennark. One of them can turn themselves into crystal, the other is a caveman. Yes, I'm serious. And while Cole's entire plot ends up with her being a damsel in distress for Gennark to come and save her alongside the Titans, it's a nice change of pace to have the non-powered peeps in the universe manage to find a way to pick up the win for the Titans in the end. Plus, they managed to make Dr. Light a credible threat, third time finally being the charm for him in the series. It's nothing mind-blowing in terms of story arcs for this, but it's a nice way to make sure they introduce yet another Titan to the fold, alongside her pet caveman. However, we get to arguably the worst episode of the season in Hide and Seek. And honestly, this episode breaks the trend of having penultimate ones being the worst because of this one gets me going in a bad way from the start, because it's got 3 annoying kids being held by Raven for an entire episode. Honestly, I get close to tapping out on it by the halfway mark on this one, and yet it's another one I do not watch on revisits because holy shit are these kids the worst! And they remind me why I am so glad that I am infertile now, because if I had to deal with little shits like these the same way Raven is doing, I'd probably lose it a lot quicker. Bottom of the list, bar none, and it's a quick contender with Mother May I for the absolute worst of the series. Another Titans Light episode, instead focusing on the Hive and Kid Flash in this one as the focal points. And I'll be honest with you all, I'm not really a big fan of this one. When the best spots of the episode come from the members of the Hive getting beaten up and owned by the rate of which Kid Flash can just kick their butts and have me check out instantly after, you know it's a bad time. The weird relationship building between Kid Flash and Jinx leading to her wanting to leave the Brotherhood of Evil as well as the Hive seems like an odd move to play, but I especially hate how they made Rouge be a part of the reason as well. She was doing a good job in Trust, why did they have to ruin her like that? It's not the worst, but at the same time I kinda wish this could have been built up way better for Jinx to leave the Hive than just some Disney movie speech by Kid Flash. Oh boy, I hope y'all like wacky races cause this is just one huge send-up of that show. You can tell I am not really looking forward to this one, can you? Yeah, I'm not a fan of this one, especially because the bad guy's name of this one is the Ding Dong Daddy, and I refuse to say that name more than once in this breakdown. But yeah, it's a wacky racist type episode for them trying to recover a briefcase that contains something important of Robin's. They spent an entire episode facing off against their entire rogues gallery, including returning Red X in order to win the race and get the briefcase back, which is promised to be a big secret of Robin's inside. And we never see it. Unlike the Red X mystery, you had to sit through an entirely pointless episode and promised us a hook like that just to cheap out at the end? Nah, this ain't it. It has some good bits at times, but it can't salvage a sour ending like that. So, only one place to go before the big finale of the season. That's right, back to the beginning of it all. That's right, origin episode of the final season, and it's actually a really good ride that shows us all how far this team has come since the first season together, especially with that first episode. Not to mention with a completely different version of Starfire, seeing Raven be all shy, have Beast Boy just come out of being ousted from the Doom Patrol, and Cyborg and Robin being the super serious of the group, and you got the makings of a certainly interesting group here. This also being David Slack's swan song of the series is also a nice touch as well, as aside from this, his last writing credit comes from the end, which really shows you the quality difference this season has had so far. But that's gonna change in a second. While technically not labeled a two-parter for a finale, you can definitely tell this is meant to be part 1 while the following episode works as part 2. But let's work with these two as separate entities for once, and with that, I gotta say, this is the weaker of the two. It's got the issues that Aftershock Part 1 had with its setup, promising a near impossible scenario for the Titans. All of them to overcome with the plot made by the Brotherhood of Evil being put into motion after an entire season of being put together. And while the last minute introductions of Argent, Bushido, Panther, Jericho, and Herald are nice, it feels a bit rushed and a bit confusing in some cases given that Jericho is technically Slade's son, but I'm not going to go into that too much or this video will take way too much longer to complete. Point is, the issues with Aftershock's setup comes back to haunt this part, and while it makes for a gripping cliffhanger, it really makes you wonder if it can really nail it where it counts, or if it'll falter at the finish line like that two-parter did. However, its second half manages to learn from the flaws of the episode that came before it and delivers a brilliant send-off to the series in this ending part, where the only Titans that remain at the beginning are Beast Boy, Mossy Meadows, Herald, and Jericho. And you think that they're totally going to be able to counter the Brotherhood of Evil with a combo like that, but they managed to absolutely mount a counterattack and set a plan to free the Titans that were captured, and then it's an all-out brawl. Literally, every character we've seen in the show pops up to be a part of this, and it's a glorious ride. It's fanwake for those that stuck it out, and honestly, like a good bit of fanwake, giving the fans an episode where they can see just how big the Titans have become in an entirety of the 5 seasons that came before this, from Titans East to the honorary Titans they have now, it's a major moment, and it's well worth topping this season's list as a result. Sometimes, you just love a good ending. Wait. Am I the only one that likes to think this episode doesn't exist? Rhetorical question, I know we all wish this would cap off the run of Teen Titans, but hey, it's here, so I'm gonna bitch a bit. Honestly, what can I say about this that hasn't been said by other people on the subject? It's a depressing episode for things to end off on to start when the Titans return home to literally find everything they loved about the city is gone or been replaced entirely, but doubles as a punch in the gut episode for BB who thinks Terra's suddenly come back to life. Except it's not her. She confirms it, Word of God confirms it, it's not Terra. And while everyone is trying to stop a new villain in town, BB is trying his best to see if Terra remembers anything, and it just goes so damn wrong that I can't help but cringe every single time he fails to get it through his head that it's not actually her. And the season just ends on such a depressing note. Not just for BB, but for the fans as well. Because aside from Trouble in Tokyo, this is the last bit of core Teen Titans media before the transition to Go happens, and it just stings so much, even after a decade and a half from it. And for that alone, this is why I refuse to cite it as the finale. More of an optional epilogue, and it ranks very low on this season's list. Sorry to those who like it, I just can't get behind it personally. Alright, we've just gone through 5 seasons and 59 episodes of Teen Titans, so there's only one thing left to do. Let's rank them all together. All 59 of them from worst to best, and here is the final ranking. Number 59, Mother May I. Number 58, Hide and Seek. Number 57, Every Dog Has His Day. Number 56, Fractured. Number 55, Things Change. Number 54, Buddy Raven. Number 53, Car Trouble. Number 52, Can I Keep Him? Number 51, Forces of Nature. Number 50, Wavelength. 49, Stranded. 48, Revved Up. 47, Date with Destiny. 46, Transformation. 45, Lightspeed. 44, Sisters. 43, Crashed. 42, Betrothed. 41, Switched. 40, Don't Touch That Dial. 39, The Inseller. 38, Mad Mod. 37, Employee of the Month. 36, Mad Mod 2 British Boogaloo. 35, Snowblind. 34, Terra. 33, 1v1 me bro. 32, Fear Itself. 31, Deep Six. 30, Cole. 29, For Real. 28, Divide and Conquer. 27, Cyborg the Barbarian. Oh my god, we're only halfway through this. 26, Birthmark. 25, Final Exam. 24, Titan Rising. 23, The Quest. 22, Spellbound. 21, Titan's East Parts 1 and 2. 20, Overdrive. 19, Nevermore. 18, Homecoming Parts 1 and 2. 17, Only Human. 16, Calling All Titans. 15, Masks. 14, Deception. 13, The Sum of His Parts. 12, Aftershock Parts 1 and 2. 11, X. 10, How Long is Forever. 9, Go. 8, Trust. 7, The Prophecy. 6, Titans Together. 5, Apprentice Parts 1 and 2. 4, Trock. 3, Betrayal. 2, Haunted. And number 1, The End, Parts 1, 2, and 3. Oh boy! That, ladies and gentlemen, is my personal picks for every episode of Teen Titans Ranked. And once again, this is not a definitive list, this is my personal opinion, but if you don't understand why I've picked these rankings by now after God knows how much time we've spent on this by this point, then I don't know what to really tell you. And for those of you wondering where I would put Trouble in Tokyo, I'd probably put it between Birthmark and Final Exam, honestly, if we're going for all 60, so it would be the actual number 25 and 24. Look, I'm not going to get into it, but it would be between those two. So if you want to count this as a 60 list from 60 to 1, it's between Birthmark and Final Exam. That's it, that's where I'm putting it, and that's where I'm going to state it. Also, please don't ask me to do Teen Titans Go. Considering how many individual episodes of that show are out by this point, and given the fact that it is still ongoing to this day, I would rather not spend more time than I need to working on a ranking for a series that I don't love as much as this, and would probably drive me nuts trying to actually figure it out. Honestly, I would rather rank every single episode of The Simpsons, but hey, that's already been done to death at this point. However, if you have gotten to this point and you do enjoy this, please don't be afraid to subscribe, hit the like button, do everything to just sort of support this. I'll be honest, I really enjoyed doing this, and I might actually do another show for this sort of ranking in the future. I've probably already brought it up in this already, so you might have an idea about where I'm going with it. But if you do want to see more of my content, please subscribe and look around. I do video essays as well, just little bits and bobs here and there. But this was really fun to do, so I might do this again sometime. So thank you all again for watching, and catch you later.